nice, I hear you.
So getting started in Pro Tools. So now when you open Pro Tools, you're gonna get a screen that looks like this. Now this is your prompt screen, and this is how we're gonna set up our sessions. We're gonna give your track a name. If you're gonna record on a beat, then go ahead and just name your session after the beat. Or if you already have a song in mind for it, then go ahead and name it after your song. So for me, I'm just getting started. All right, so now that we gave our session a name, we're gonna come down here and you're gonna choose whether you want from a local storage, which means on your computer, or if you want on Avid's cloud or Avid servers, then go ahead and use this. And then as we come down, our next thing is create from template. So now what a template is basically just a pre-built session that already have some tracks on it and to get you started. As you can see, I have a couple myself, but for today's purposes and getting started, we're gonna not use a template. If you want to know more about templates, I have a video on my channel. I'll leave the link below about templates and building templates, so check it out. So now coming down here, you're gonna leave this at wave. We're gonna be working with audio and music, so we're gonna leave this at wave. Now your sample rate, depending on what kind of interface you have, you'll see I have all the way up to 192. You may not. If you have 48, use 48. And then our bit depth, like I said, this is another thing depending on your interface and what kind of interface you have. You'll either have 16, 24. I use 24. If you don't have 24, that's okay. You can just use 16. And then for the IO settings, you're just gonna use last. So now we're gonna come down here. Now this is prompt for location or location. Now what this means is where do you want this whole session when we create it? Where would you like it to be saved? So for me, I have a specific folder and I save all my sessions. You can go in here and set up where you would like all your Pro Tools sessions to be saved. So prompt for location just basically means you set up the session and it will ask you after, or location, we just set it up right now as we're setting up the session. And when you hit create, it's just gonna build your tracks. So now we're gonna hit create. Now, when you create your session, you're just gonna get a blank screen like this. I know what you're thinking, like, oh man, where's my tracks? How do I get to things? How am I gonna record? What do you record on? We're gonna have to build all that and set it all up, and I'm gonna show you how. Now, Pro Tools has two screens that most people go back and forth on. Some people like to go back and forth and use the mixing screen, and some like to use this edit window. But we're gonna build some tracks so you can see the difference between the screens. Now, the first thing you're gonna wanna do when you get to this window is you're gonna wanna go to Setup, Playback Engine, and you wanna make sure that whatever interface you're using, whether it be Focusrite or M-Audio, you're gonna wanna see and make sure that your interface is selected. So my interface is selected. Then you're gonna come down here, and my recommendation is if when you're recording, you're gonna use 64 to 128 samples, and then when you're ready to mix and master, you're gonna go ahead and use 1024 to 512. And then you can go ahead and ignore errors during playback, and you can check for the dynamic plugin processing. Now that our interface is set up, we're gonna come over to our track and make some new tracks. So now our track, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make one stereo master fader, and then I'm gonna go ahead and make one stereo audio, and this is the track that I put my beat on. And then I'm gonna go make one more. We'll go make one mono audio track. This is a track we'll record on. And then I'm gonna go ahead and create. Now if you wanna just create, you can go ahead and just hit this plus and minus that adds or deletes tracks. So now I'm gonna go ahead and add 6 mono tracks, 2 tracks for my main, 2 tracks for stacks or dubs, and 2 tracks for ad-libs. And then we're gonna go ahead and just create 3 auxiliary. So we're gonna go stereo, auxiliary tracks, and this is for busing and routing. And if you don't know and you wanna learn more about busing and routing, I have a video. I'll leave the link in the description below. So that looks good. We're gonna go ahead and create. So now we have our tracks right here, and these are what we're gonna be using and working with and recording on. And this screen these tracks are on is called our playlist or edit window. You can go window, mix, and this is the mix window. So this is basically our virtual mixing board. This is where we see where all of our levels are. We can see what plugins or effects we're using on our tracks and give us an overall view of what each track looks like. I'm gonna use this beat called Flute Nation that I made, and I'm gonna go ahead and drag it into Pro Tools. So I'm gonna drag it in, I'm just gonna put it underneath my tracks, and it's gonna make a track for it. And now we can go ahead and take our track using our hand tool. We can go ahead and move our track to our beat. Now this is where I put my beat. I like to put my beat on the top just so I have a better idea and reference to the audio tracks. Let's go over some tools. Starting from the top to bottom, we have this box, which is our shuffle, spot, grid, and slip. This just is how you're gonna interact with the grid. What I mean by the grid is right now I have it in slip, and you can see I can move this anywhere I want. It moves free, it slips in and out of the grid. So now when I have it on grid mode, you can see now when I move it, it moves to the bars and it snaps to the lines. We'll zoom in a little bit, and you can see when I move it now, it goes to each line, and that means it's grid and it's snapping to our grid. So now this right here is our zoom toolbar, and what this does is this helps us zoom in and zoom out on the clips. If something's real low, but you don't want to turn the volume up and down on it, you just want to make the waves so you can see them better, you'll go ahead and use this tool to turn them up and down. Now this, I don't really use this tool. And then these arrows to the side right here, these are gonna adjust zooming out, and zooming in. And your numbers are just presets for zooms. So 1 will be all the way kind of out, and then as 5 will be all the way in. Over here, you have your tool. This is the toolbar. So you can see you have 3 different tools here. Now the first tool is the edge grabbing tool. So what this does is it just moves tracks. You go to the edge of the tracks and you can move them. So this is your highlighting tool. And the next is your grabbing tool. Now we have what's called the fast bar. And what you do is this bar on the top, you're just gonna click it. So that all 3 of these. So if I come to the top, it's gonna give me my highlight tool. If I come towards the middle, it's gonna give me the volume tool. And if I come towards the bottom, it's gonna give me my hand tool. So how we use this is if I wanted to highlight a section and use my hand tool, maybe move it down here and move it around, you can. So now moving on, I don't really worry about these too much. This tool's kind of important because this is a toggle switch, insertion following playback. So what that means basically is if this is off, when I hit play and I let this go, no matter where it's at, when I stop it, it's gonna come back to where you placed it, and you place it by clicking. So when it's on and toggled and you leave it and you play, it's gonna go where it last left off. So that's what that's for. These you don't really have to worry about. Right here's our time and where you're at on the grid and what time signature you're at. So if I'm 25 seconds into the beat. And then right here is your grid. So this is how small or big you can make your grid. The smaller you make it, the more you can manipulate it and move it. Whereas it's gonna move in bigger increments. So now why this is important and the grid is important is because when you have audio and you're moving it around and dragging it around, you don't want it to move and shift off time. So what this grid does is it just helps everything stay on time. So now we come over here. Now for recording, you're not really gonna use this. Now you're gonna come over here to our stop. This is our stop. So when audio is playing or something's playing, we don't want it to play anymore, we're gonna hit the stop button. This is my play button and this is your record button. You're probably wondering why my play button has this. Now mine is on loop. So what that means is yours is probably gonna look like this and look like this. So now I always put my play into loop. So that way when I highlight something and I play it, when this comes to the end, it's just gonna loop back and it's gonna play it and keep playing it. So right here is all your timing and tempo. So your tempo is really important as you're gonna wanna find the BPM, the beats per minute on your instrumental. It's important to line it up. Certain plugins and effects go off of your time signature. So if you're timing, you don't have the correct BPM on your beat, some of the effects won't sound good. And then from over here, you don't have to worry about any of this. This isn't really important. As far as just recording vocals goes, this isn't important. We're gonna move down. Now this is just kind of like an overview of the mixer and what inserts and sends are on your tracks. So that's what that's for. Now yours may not look like this and have this many tracks. I set this up so it looks like this. If you would like to know how to do that, you can go and right click one of these and you'll get this. And this is just the boxes and different things you can look at on the side of your tracks. Go into our mixer, top to bottom. Now I have heat. You may not have heat. If you don't have heat, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's a plugin that Avid sells separately, and I went and bought it. So now our inserts here, as you can see, we have 10 inserts. Now our inserts are where we put our plugins for our tracks or effects. So if you want to put in, if you wanted to put in an EQ, your EQs, your compressors and limiters, that's going to be in dynamics, or any type of effects. You can put reverb and delay on it too. I like to use auxiliaries, but we'll get into that later. Our sends are our tracks for our auxiliaries, and they correlate with our auxiliary tracks and busing and routing. So like I said, I don't like to put reverb on every single track. What I like to do is just put reverb on this one track, and then we'll bus and route and send reverb to each track. And that's what your sends are for. So you may not have this or see this. If not, it's okay. You can just right click and your EQ curve. So what this means is anytime you put an EQ on one of these tracks, it's gonna just give you an idea and show you what kind of EQing you have on each track, which is kind of helpful because based on what the EQ is on each track, I can kind of have an idea of what's going on the track, depending whether it's a main vocal or an ad-lib track. So for instance, you know, if I were to go to EQ and go to a preset factory and we'll just go vocal cleanup, you can see that whatever I have on here is gonna show right here. Then we're gonna come down to your I/O. So now this is your ins and your outs. Now if you have a home interface such as like a Focusrite, Scarlett, or a PreSonus or M-Audio, and some interfaces will have anywhere from 1 to 16 inputs. Most interfaces will have 2 inputs for microphones or instruments. So just pay attention to whatever microphone your input is in, because if you have it in channel 1, then you need to go to interface and it needs to say channel 1. If you have it in channel 2, that's fine, you could leave it in channel 2, but just make sure you have channel 2 on your interface. Most of the time, Pro Tools, they're gonna route this for you, so you don't really have to touch this. Then we're gonna move on to auto. Auto is short for automation. And what that means is if you want, let's say on a part of a song, if it's too loud somewhere and you want it to turn it down and then come for that part and then come back up to its original level, that's what you would use automation for. So, you know, if I come down here and turn this down to 15, it's gonna stay at 15. But using automation, you can go ahead and play the song, and then the part that needs to come down, go ahead and put it down, bring it back up when it needs to bring back up, and then after you're done, you'll stop it, put it on read, and once it's on read, then it's gonna go ahead and do exactly what you just set it to do. And then moving on, this is grouping. So grouping just means if you have tracks grouped together, if I have these 3 tracks and they're grouped together, anytime I move one of these, they're all gonna move at the same time. That's what group is. So then we have these knobs right here. You'll see that this track has 2 and this track only has 1. So that indicates that the one that has 2 tracks, this is a stereo track because it has 2, one for the left channel, one for the right. This is R1, just means it's a mono. So this is like a microphone input, and the middle just means it sends it to the middle. When they're like this also means they're in the middle. It's just your left is on your left and your right is over on your right. With these are your pan knobs, and that just means, you know, on these mono tracks, if I push this over here, it's gonna push that sound to the left speaker. If I put it over here, it's gonna push it to the right. When I bring it in the middle, it's gonna come and bring it out of both. This is your track monitor input. When you have it on input, you're not gonna have anything play on that track back. So if there's like a song or something recorded on the track and you have this selected, you're only gonna hear if you have your instrument or your microphone turned on. So now this is track arming. Now what track arming does, so when you hit record, it's gonna go ahead and record whatever channel or whatever you have on this. So that's why, you know, if you have a microphone on channel 1 and then you have a microphone on channel 2, you know, and you want both those microphones to record at the same time, when you hit record from your playlist, it's going to record both the channels. Or if you have 2 microphones, but you only want channel 1, the microphone you have from channel 1 to record, then you're only going to arm this one. It will record only that one channel. You can go ahead and arm as many tracks as you want. Like I said, like this, if you have 16 inputs, you know, a drum set may have 7 microphones hooked up to it and around it to capture all the different drums. So, you know, sometimes they record, you know, 7, 8 channels at a time. This is our solo. If I have a bunch of audio recorded on these tracks, you know, like let's say this is the lead singer and these are my drum tracks and this is a guitar track, and I just want to listen to just one of the tracks, I'm going to go ahead and solo it out. And that means when I play, only this one track or the tracks that are soloed are going to play. So now the M is for your mute. Now what this means is on your mute, if I have, like I said, a bunch of these audio on these tracks and I don't want to hear, let's say this is my guitar track and I don't want to hear the guitar, I just want to hear my drums and vocal track, I'm going to just mute that out and I'm going to play, and whatever's muted is not going to play during playback. So now moving on, I have a slider knob, and what my slider knob does is, you know, it turns it up and it turns it down, the volume, and that's how that works. So now down here, we have the names, the track names, and you can see we can toggle in and out of these tracks. So what I mean by that is, let's say I wanted to move this track over here. How I would do it is make sure it's highlighted, and then I will go ahead and, you know, move it and move it around. So you can move the track wherever you want to move it. You can also move more than one. Hold down the shift key, highlight as many tracks as you want. And you know, if you wanted to move them over here, you can move them over here. Now these are not anything adjustable. So these are just readouts, and they tell you kind of where gives you an idea of where all your track levels are at as well. So now this is called building a session. So now if you're not saving this or using this as a template, every time you open Pro Tools to make a song or record vocals, you're gonna have to build a session like we just did. Unless you don't want to have to build a session every time, then you know you're gonna want to build yourself a session, and you're gonna want to make yourself a template. Now I do have a video, and I'll leave the link in below, on templates and how to build a template. So now I'm just gonna kind of go over some basics on recording and using the edit window here. So whenever you're ready to record our channel, you're just gonna go ahead, you know, you're gonna put your beat, your MP3 instrumental in. You're gonna get that BPM for it. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and arm your track. Now, when you arm your track, you know, you're gonna hear yourself in the headphones or whatever you're recording. And for record, so now when we're ready to record, we can go ahead, we can hit a record button and we can hit play. And that's how we record into a track. Then if you wanted to record, you know, let's say that was your main verse and you wanted to do some ad-libs or some fill-ins, you know, you can come over here and go to this track. Now make sure too, if you're using the same microphone that's either on channel 1 or 2, make sure also, you know, all your interface channels, you know, are channel 1 or 2. So you want them to be all even across the board. So another technique we use is one channel recording. So now if you want to, you know, come over here and record the one channel, and let's say that was your main verse or your main vocals, you know, you'll come over here, you'll come to your hand tool, click, and you'll drag it down. Let's say you wanted to do some ad-libs or fill-ins, you can go ahead and record on that same channel, and then when you're done, you can go ahead, take your hand tool, and you can drag that down and just keep going until you're done, you know. And we could also use this technique to punch and record, where we do punching. So let's say you only recorded up to here, you know, you couldn't do it all in one take, so you want to say about 5 to 10 words, and then you want to come back in and record. So we can go ahead and do that. And the way we want to do it is we want to, on a record, make sure that it's on quick punch. Mine's already on. Yours may look like this. So we just want to go quick punch. And with the quick punch, you know, we're going to play. And when I get to the part just before, you're going to hit that record button to punch in. And then you can hit the record button again to punch out, and you know, vice versa. So then when you're done, and now, you know, you're ready to punch back in. And now we can go and let's say we want to clean this up a little bit because we don't want the overlapping vocal. So what we can do right here is go to our edges and we can just clean these up, you know. Maybe I'll put, and just overlap them. So that way, you know, your words don't overlap the last word. And that's how we get to sound like one take. So now if you see, I have these clip lines, okay? You may not have them, so let's set those up. Now what these are for is they can control the volume of each individual clip. So you're gonna go to view, and we're gonna go to clip, and you're gonna make sure that your clip gain line is on. So now another tool we can use too is if we come to the edge of the clip, we have this little box, and this is our fade tool. So let me zoom in, and we're gonna put it on slip. So now our fade tool just kind of gives us a crossfade. So, you know, when you're cleaning up vocals, you're going to want to come in here and, you know, give it a little crossfade. Now, hypothetically, let's say that, you know, this is your recordings. So now when you record, you should look something like this when you record. So let's say you just punched in and now you want to clean it up. You'll just come over here to the edge and, you know, you just clean it up a little bit. So now, look, it goes right into the next. So that's how we get started on Pro Tools. If you feel like there was something I missed or to go into detail more, you want to learn more about something, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and hit the subscribe.